Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Sunday, which means it's stream time, and hopefully you're all having a great day. Let me get some more light on the subject here. Sorry I'm a little late. I actually was caught up in the middle of character generation, um, making my character for making a heroic character. So, um, should be fun. All right, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about celebrations and holidays in games. I'm sure everybody is more than familiar with the concept of, um, the holiday game, as in the game that you run around the holidays. That sort of often, tie into the theme of the holiday, are sort of a joke or just for fun, using it thematically. And while that's a way to use holidays in games, it's not quite what I'm getting at today. More so, what I wanted to look at is ways in which uh, you can use the holidays in your world, to work into your adventures, and then also, you know uh, how to use them to build to do world building. Looks like we had from the hilt here, John of the Ozarks. That's a new name I have not seen. Welcome, welcome. And Grumpy Slan. Of course, John of the Ozarks. That makes me wonder what part of the Ozarks. Um, Seeing as I find myself smack dab on the edge of them these days. Um, Anyways, holidays. So I have used a lot of holidays and celebrations, just general events in my games quite a lot, whether they are simply the backdrop for an adventure or the inciting event for an adventure. Sometimes they are just a way to mark the passage of time. These are all different ways you can do them. When you're creating adventures, or not adventure, but holidays and celebrations for your game, the I guess the first question is, where do you start, and what do you do to create uh, these events? Tying them into whatever pantheon is in the area is a good way to go. A lot of holidays are going to celebrate specific events in the culture there, but also through the deities who people worship. Alrighty, cool. Well, welcome, John of the Ozarks. I am about 20 minutes north of the city myself, so um, the so you want to look at cultural aspects and environmental aspects, of your setting. So, like, what is important to the people? What gods do they pray to? What do those gods hold important? Because two different agricultural gods, for example, are often going to have different ways to that they want to be celebrated, that they want to be worshipped. Some, you might have some bloody, you know, very visceral agricultural god that requires sacrifice. You might have another agricultural god who wants parties and just general debauchery. Um, you might have an agricultural god that wants you to celebrate the plentiful harvest by just being generous. So you want to consider where where the holiday's coming from, and then work the details out from there. Um, a good, easy shorthand is to, of course, borrow from the real world. There's uh, lots of different holidays, even for the same event, all over our world, and so you can certainly work those in. Most cultures are going to have, harvest celebrations. They're going to have solstice and equinox, celebrations. They're going to have celebrations and holidays that mirror the astronomy, um, and the astrology of your world. Uh, Hey Bear, welcome, and Dirty History, History and Hobbies, welcome. Um, so now that said, I would caution against borrowing too heavily from the real world. Um, if anything, just use real world holidays as the roadmap for your holidays, and then really try to make them unique to your world. Um, that doesn't mean you have to completely detach yourself from the trappings of the real world, but you can. I think you're serving your world best when you can create holidays that are uh, somewhat unique to your world. So I'm going to bring up here real quick a tool that I find really useful in tracking holidays. Um, Before I get too far into this, I use a tool that is called fantasycalendar.com. If you've never seen this, it's pretty cool. Um, it allows you to set up the number of moons for your world. It allows you to set up the the seasons, how many months, how many weeks, and then it tracks the holidays, continuously. And you will get as you go along. Um, it will keep track of those holidays. You can even set holidays to occur based on calendar date. You can set them to occur based on lunar cycles. You can base them on number of days. Like it could occur on the same day every year. It could occur every 230 days. It could occur, you know, when moon A is in full. You can do all of that. So this is my map for my this is my calendar for my current game. We have the first month of the year, that's Tal, and the months of the year are named after a combined pantheon. Um, there's an old pantheon and a new pantheon, and the holidays, the months sort of. If I recall, the months are basically all named after the new religion, and the a lot of the holidays follow the deities of the old one. This is a really cool thing you can do too. So you'll see I have Talhast on here. That's a holiday in the month of Tal. And then we can pull it up and you can actually get a description of what it is. Um, I typed this out, and so you can know what it entails. You can also then put in notes and comments. There are most of these things you can add here. Will have the ability to add GM's notes and player notes because you can invite your players to be able to to look at the calendar. Like all my players have access to this, and you can hide things from them. You'll notice the colored bands. These are tracking uh, the months and the seasons. So you'll notice the color bands change based on season, which is kind of cool. You can set the seasonal ranges too, which is really neat. But also, I use this is neat too because in addition to tracking all the holidays and because it'll give you weather. You'll notice up in the little corner here, if I hover over it, it gives me a description of the temperature and the weather that day. You can set the parameters for your weather. So this is a really useful tool. Now you can always make exceptions. Pinch Day. It's the day of celebrated by thieves and murderers and bandits. And this is an example of a holiday that really doesn't have a real world equivalent. And that's why I pulled this up, is I want to show some of the holidays that I've created for my setting. Um, the traditional honey cookie called Bandit's Gold uh, is served on there. It's baked and handed out to children on this day. Children have a tradition themselves involving pinching adults that do not give them treats. So it's kind of like a trick or treat kind of a holiday, but it's earlier in the year. It's so this is the other thing. You don't have to place them where they would normally be. I also, like I said, I do use this as a tracker for my campaign. You'll see later on um, that there will be events on here that correspond to the things that went on in my campaign. We have Mercy Day, um, And then on the 1st of Zemet, we have two holidays that coincide. We have Waking Day, celebration of the beginning of spring, celebrated by fairs, marriages, moonlight ceremony, we're offering to the goddess Breda. But we also have Queen's Night, occurring on the spring equinox. The celebration is of the Queen of the Fae, a nighttime ceremony that observed only by those closest to the Fae, witches, moon priestesses, druids. So another thing for holidays is have some overlap. Um, and then you can see that the adventure, this is where the campaign kicked off, and so I would kind of recap the key moments in the campaign. Um, Moonbind, first day in which all three moons um, are in full night sky. So it's technically misplaced on the map here, but who cares? Because actually, yeah, because you can see here we got all three are full. Because if you hover over the moon, it'll actually tell you what phase it's actually in. So that's useful. You can see the campaign was really lively and kicked off a lot here. And then I started running a second campaign in the same setting, so I was able to actually mark those events here. We have Sylvaneth, Victory Day, celebration of the end of the season of war. It's if you look here, it's we're only really celebrating in Greywatch, which is the last vestiges of the old or the new world influence or the new kingdom influence on this setting. It's holiday for soldiers and nobility and royalty that command them. Few commoners, save those with a background as a soldier, bother the day. Think of it sort of a Memorial Day, Veterans Day kind of a thing, which I guess is relevant to today or this weekend. Let's see. Vaxen, celebration of the summer, marked by fair as well as a contest of strength and skill. Why this has the number 5, I do not know. Weird. There have been some glitches. Well, this is the 5th of the day, but there's no holiday associated with it. So I'm going to venture that that is probably a failed note. But yeah, so going through, then we end up in this big old month-long this is another cool thing about this is you can mark ranges, like celebrations that occur over a range of days. So we have, fall begins, and so we have Drachenfest. The purpose of Drachenfest is to ward communities against harm by dragons in the coming month. Bonfires blaze all over the countryside as effigies of dragons are burned. It is also traditional to cast offerings into the fires, and that is because Dragonfall is the entire month. The month of Ratanger is marked by the annual arrival of the dragons in the skies. It's basically the dragon mating season in this campaign. So the whole month is when dragons are most active. And interestingly enough, this is when my campaign currently is, and they basically reached the lair of this ancient white dragon during the middle of this month. You notice here in the next month we have Hallowhast, beginning of fall, somber occasion marked by remembrance of the dead, candles and offerings. And then we also have a week later, we have Hostwain, the day of the departed dead. This is the day when the dead who have been visiting for the week leave. And so decorations made of autumn leaves, produce and wicker are hung about the home. It's believed to show the dead family is not saddened by their departure, but welcomes them back in the following year. So you can really set up your game world by using these holidays, and each of these flavors the setting. With Grimhost, the Darkest Night of Halor. There's an entire week event here called Broadnost. It's the week of feasts. It celebrates in the second week in a week of Brodor, mid fall. And so it even has, I even put in a schedule of banquets that you have, each day of the week has different themed foods, breads and pastries, fish and fowl, beef, pork, mutton, and lamb, and then the grand feast on the final day where all things are served. So yeah, this tool is free. You can maintain multiple calendars on it. It's pretty cool. I have really enjoyed it, and the neat thing is that, for example, when you set these holidays, you can look, you can have it do a forecast to see when they will occur in the future. So let's say you are trying to create a holiday that or an event, because you can set events and holidays and things like that. So like you could have celestial events on here that are marked as well. Let's say you wanted to create one that was like every 100 years or so. You can project in the future and see when it'll happen again, or if it's every 10 years or 5 years or whatever. And so even when you're running your campaign, if it goes on long enough, you'll be able to see when these holidays come up again. One thing this calendar has really served for in my current campaign is to remind the players just how much their characters have been away from home. Um, uh, it is super cool because in that respect, because the campaign really is a hometown campaign where they're really rooted in a particular city, and so that being away from home during the holidays is a good way for me to remind them as a GM, like, you've been away from home and you've missed all these different holidays. And some of the players have actually expressed, that their characters are starting to really miss that. They haven't been home for those holidays. They haven't been able to celebrate all the good things that they grew up with. So yeah, that's a really cool thing. So that is, again, that is the fantasycalendar.com. I'll go ahead and put it in the notes for the show once it's done. But that's a good one to use. The So that's a tool I use for tracking holidays, and I kind of got myself sidetracked in that. But so your holidays are there to build your world and to set the stage for adventures. Celebrations I would count as holidays, because not all celebrations are necessarily tied to some cycle of holidays, but they could be specific events, coronations, tournaments, things like that. Um, the country fair, the county fair, whatever you want to have in your setting. These are all good things to have in there. An example of a couple of holidays I've created for settings. I did create Wintermeet for not this campaign, but another one, although often I borrow one. But in that particular setting, it was a very isolated mountain valley where everything was happening. Wintermeet was a holiday where the elves would come out of the forested mountains and celebrate the mutual peace and community between them and the humans of the valley that allowed both of them to sort of prosper. And so children would stay up all night to try and see the progression of the elves coming out of the forests and down through their villages. It was kind of magical for the kids to stay up and see the elves, and then in the the following days, they would have the celebration where they would just enjoy that sense of community. This is also where a lot of the half elves came from, because there was a lot of meetups and hookups, and also it was considered traditionally good luck to have your as a human to have your wedding blessed by the elves. And then of course there would be one big final feast, and then the elves would leave by night, and there'd be a nighttime procession where all adults and children would watch. And it was just kind of a cool little Christmas/Thanksgiving kind of an analogy. I also had one. I borrowed the name of it for this campaign, but it's a different holiday. I had Drachenfest, which was this one town where the players showed up during Drachenfest. And in this case, Drachenfest was the celebration of the city's liberation from a dragon that had plagued them for generations. This dragon would come in during the harvest, demand all of their harvest, leave them pretty much without, you would always leave them enough, but barely enough. And so the people had suffered when they finally were able to rid themselves of this dragon. It became a holiday, and so it is a holiday of feasting. It's their fall festival. So it's sort of like Halloween and Thanksgiving, because the children run around dressed up in various costumes, and they they dress up in dragon costumes. If I recall, they run around in dragon costumes, and they demand tribute from local merchants and houses and the like. And at the end of the festival, everybody takes off their costumes and they burn them in giant bonfires, and they have a great time. So again, you're establishing, setting just some cool character for your players to interact with. Let's see. I had one scenario that began. I had one adventure that began with the players escorting a shipment of ale to a brewing contest that was being held. So some this would be more of the event category than the holiday category. It's not really a celebration even, but so like any event, though, it had a fair around it, lots of contests of strength and skill, drinking contests, things like that, and of course, the ability to go around tasting the various brews from around the county. And then an adventure kicked off, because in the middle of this, evil struck, and the players were called to action, or the characters were called to action. So that is definitely a way to use them as well. I kicked off one campaign. It was a weird campaign. It was very much a themed campaign. All the players were playing Cayman. I don't know if you're familiar with what those are, but in Mystara, the Cayman are like these small lizard men. Think lizard men, but halfling sized. And so the campaign kicked off with them going through their rites of adulthood, and so they had to go through these various trials in this celebration, leading up to the final trial, which was to go out and hunt down a beast, which was sort of their first level adventure. You've got a lot of adventures in first level campaigns that are, go to the basement, clear out the rats, get some XP, a little lesser dungeon. But this is a jungle themed adventure. It was supposed to be the kickoff of a campaign, but it never really went past that first adventure, unfortunately. But yeah, we started off with that event, which is an event in their lives, more so than like a holiday or anything like that. But it was definitely a cool way to start off that campaign. Much different than meeting in a tavern or your traditional call to action. The idea was, of course, that they were going to go out and do this initial adventure, solidify themselves as the players would be able to solidify the characters, get to know what they can do, but also the characters would be able to bond and then form into a band who might then further on go and do adventures. The plan in that campaign was to have them, while out doing this traditional hunt in this rite of passage, discover something that then prompted them to carry on to do further adventure. Yeah, this is a good one. This has already come to play in my campaign, though we did have to pick which moon the particular shifter in question was tied to, and track that one, because when you have multiple moons, which one is it that the werewolves are tied to? I even found, I'm not sure how to. I'm not sure. I should say I'm not sure how to do it with this. I'm pretty sure it's in there. I just never dug deep enough. I wanted to have a fourth moon that only appeared every so often, but I don't know how to make that happen. So we'll see. I think in this case, it is. I think what I ended up doing is just making one of the moons have a slightly different visibility. So yeah, it's in terms of the why and the how of it. Um, it's not a hard thing to do. It's just something to consider doing. Um, you know, it's literally as simple as picking what you're celebrating and then making a few notes on what it's all about. For example, if I pull up just to present my calendar again here, if I pull up Grimhost, again, this is the darkest night of Halar. Is the night of fear and isolation, while the beloved dead's visit on Halahast. It is believed that the angry, vengeful spirits and demons come up from the underworld, while Hallow's eyes are almost closed. Traditionally, nobody goes outside on this night, fearing an encounter with the grim denizens. Murders and disappearances on this night are often attributed to the spirits and demons that roam. This is also the day that the folk believe that Morg swallows the moons. So the folk is the old religion in the area, pre-colonization. But you can see there in that little blurb, I've already set up some possible adventure ideas. Nobody goes outside on that day because they're afraid of running into ghosts and demons that roam the earth. Um, so what happens when the players have to go out on that night? Um, you could create an adventure where they really have to, or maybe they just catch themselves traveling on that night. Like in my current campaign, while the players are out and about, they they haven't got there yet in the timeline because they're only in the beginning of Radengar during Dragonfall. But if they haven't reached home by then, what do they do? Um, do they find shelter? Do they wait? Do they have to wait it out? Do they have to sit there around a campfire in the middle of the night, holding watchful vigil to avoid being attacked by demons? Um, yeah, and this is another one. I mean, the other thing, disappearance and murders that happen on that night get blamed on the ghosts. So, what are the chances that that night is often used for people to engage in underhanded practices? Um, Murders, sacrifices, abductions, things like that might go on that night because you can just say, well, the ghosts did it. I don't know where that kid went from the village. It must have been the ghosts. Um, so yeah, I mean, it definitely this creation of this holiday creates an opportunity, a setting for adventures. Um, Even something like Brodnost, which is this week of feasting, that's a great one to theme some intrigue around. Um, if uh, if the players are really involved or really invested, it might be important to them to be there for that whole holiday. Maybe there are adventures that key into that. Okay, so you know, on day 7, the grand feast, Lord such and such wants to really wow you know, his people, so he employs the party to go hunt and kill some fantastic beast to be presented at that final feast. Simple calls to adventure that can come from these holidays are good, but you can also tie it into bigger things because there could be all kinds of intrigue across that week. Maybe somebody's poisoned. Maybe there's clearly tension between various nobles or even commoners that are at these celebrations. And then we have Goldust, celebration of gold, primary gift giving day in the Farfields. Farfields is the region. Pull this back up here. Celebrating the year that has passed and the fortune that folk have hopefully had. The gifts of jewels, semi-precious stones, and objects of silver and gold mark this occasion. Children are often gifted with sets of clothes for the upcoming year. Because Kurok's golden goat was born on this day, parents often give their children gift their children with new pets on as well. So you can see we've got different layers. Then again, hey Sean, how's it going? Uh, all good, Sean, but this is not for my campaign for the this is not for the By the Sword campaign. This is for my 5e game that I play offline. Um, when I first set up the campaign 3 years ago, I immediately set up this calendar. Um, I should or could do something for By the Sword. By the Sword, though, I'm trying to keep it a little lighter and a little closer to the cuff when it comes to the source material, which was usually very episodic. Um, and so I'm not so sure I want to do a calendar for that one. Yeah, I have plans tomorrow, so I'm not going to be running By the Sword. I do, however, have D&D tonight with Cody and crew, I believe. So we'll see. Let's see. All right, so holidays. It's kind of hard. It's hard to talk in detail about holidays um, because, again, it's one of those things that's sort of a cool idea, but there's not a lot of meat to it. Um, I would say for your game, sit down. If your game doesn't already have a setting with holidays, if you're doing a homebrew or just your setting doesn't specifically state it, sit down and create you um, for your either for your setting or for specific gods. A handful of adventures. Yeah, I'm not sure if Cody is running it tonight. I haven't even actually verified that. He hasn't chimed up in the thing yet, so who knows? Uh, yes, Hollandaise. We're here to celebrate Hollandaise. Um, but yeah, I mean, sit down with your list of gods and come up with at least one important day associated with that god. If the god's a little bit more complicated, um, maybe come up with a couple. If you, especially if you have gods that represent multiple aspects of the world, a god of death can be good and bad, or neither. Um, let's see. I mean, I remember for one campaign, I had a death god called the Harpsman, and he would literally appear in world and join people at their table, their campfire, whatever. Just wander by if they were standing watch, and he would play for them um, when their time was near. And that's not a holiday, but that's certainly an event you can kind of build into your world. Um, Not a celebration of a holiday, but in the same vein, an event that you can put in to build your world. Um, if nothing else, it will allow for a seed of intrigue and suspicion for your players. If they're aware of this occurrence, this story, this myth, what happens when just some random traveling troubadour sits down and starts playing a harp? Um, they may freak out, and for good or for bad. It's holidays definitely can go a long way towards establishing your world and helping you build it. And they are great for the beginning of adventures and also reasons for adventuring. Uh, depending on the holiday, they can make a really good call to action. Uh, if a god is demanding something on a particular holiday, or there's at least a belief that God demands something, then your players can get called to action to try to do things for lords or priests or whatever, or or other folk who are trying to meet that requirement. You know, we need a white stag to sacrifice at this, at this festival. Well, how common are those? So we have a month to get this thing. So now the players are off trying to figure out a white stag. How are you going to figure it out? Or, you could make it simpler for the players. Just say that, people know of a white stag somewhere. Players go out to get it. And that may seem pretty straightforward, but what happens while they're traveling out and trying to do this task? Is the white stag just a MacGuffin? Which it definitely could be. And what the adventure actually is, is something else that happens along the way. Could it be that the white stag is still a MacGuffin, but it's actually a bit more central to the story? Like, okay, you're going to go hunt the white stag. Well, maybe the white stag is really sacred to some elves or a group of druids or whatever. So now your players are, from the start of this holiday requirement, on their way out to get this white stag, which now puts them in conflict with some other some other entity, some other group of people, and therefore you now have adventure, intrigue, whatever your goal is. Could be as simple as the white stag is not necessarily important, but is deep inside dangerous territory. The white stag is seen by the players. They give chase. It runs off into the haunted wood. Now the players are on a wilderness adventure through the haunted wood, trying to track down the white stag for the sacrifice, for this holiday, the celebration, whatever it is. And it kind of writes itself, right? If we look at movies, for example, we have Clash of the Titans, right? We open up with a marriage. There's a boast made. God's called into action. Whole adventure. So that would be in the celebration category, not so much the holiday category. But you could do the holiday thing with that. What if you are in the middle of your holiday and you have a nobleman or a king presenting a gift and makes some really high, lofty claims, insults a god. Next thing you know, players are out to save the kingdom, save the king, save the princess, whatever. Yeah, I mean, this is another thing too. I mean, it's a very good point. You can definitely use them um to control access to materials. You know, parties in town. There's a feast celebration going on. Maybe replenishing rations is actually kind of tricky because everybody's sold out. Um, the other thing too is places could be closed. If you're in town and there's a big celebration going on, maybe all of the places that you need to buy from are closed. That could also be a good thing. Maybe if your party is of the more uh, miscreant bent, they may decide, hey, while everybody's away playing, we can just help ourselves to things from the merchants. Or now's a good time to go rob the royal library um, for that scroll that we need for whatever quest element we have to achieve. So yeah, you definitely can go different directions with that. But yeah, it's definitely a good point. So we are coming up on the the hour, and I usually do these for 2 hours. I've said it a couple times. It's not a heavy topic, so I'm kind of running out of stuff to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw an invite in here, and we'll see if anybody would like to come on and chat openly. Otherwise, if you don't want to come up on the stream, go ahead and just continue to comment. Let's try this while we're waiting. Let's go ahead and create a holiday. All right. Somebody give me a sphere of influence for a god. Just throw one out in the comments. What god are we creating a holiday for? And then also, if you have ideas what's important to that god, go ahead and throw that in there as well. Fertility. Okay. So, Dirty History and Hobbies throws out fertility. Okay. So, with that, are we going with, is this a holiday that is a folk holiday, or is this more of a ecclesiastical kind of um, high level kind of, uh, I would say, royal holiday?
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. I see once again you threw up a link and no one joined you. So me being me, I'm like, well, I'm not going to leave Eli hanging.
We only gave him like 30 seconds. So
I don't care. They should have been on that. They should have been ready. And literally, I went and did something else, came back, saw the link, and clicked it.
All right. Well, the link just went up. All right. So what I've done is throw out into the comments section. We're going to create a holiday, and so we've got a shout out for a fertility holiday. Now, what I'm trying to do, I'm asking them is this a folk holiday, or is it more of a sort of a elevated sort of ecclesiastical kind of a holiday?
Ooh, good question.
It could also be both. It could be that you have the folk observance and then the church observance, kind of like St. Patrick's Day, divided up across the two countries. That is, of course, St. Patrick's Day here, St. Patrick's Day over in Ireland are very different things.
Yeah, I think.
And so, but you can. This is a good. That's actually a really good example for how you could work it in your campaign, because you could put both of those things happening in the same place. You know, the high mucky mucks are celebrating it in one way, you know, proper society, and then the folk are doing their own thing. You know, so let's see.
No, John of the Ozarks makes a really good point with I like the folk idea of Wicker Man. So you've got two different things. You could have an old pagan thing, like a Wicker Man thing, where they sacrifice someone to ensure the fertility of their coming season and that there'll be lots of babies born and what have you. And the church that's more modern being like, really got to stop sacrificing people, guys. It's not really a cool move anymore. So you can really play with that, and you can really have sort of a whole bunch of things, right? Like, so it takes your St. Patrick's idea of having this pagan crazy party, and then ties it to what Dirty History is saying about, no, it's an ecclesiastical come to the temple and pay money and eat food and be really, really, really well behaved event, you know? So
Exactly, and that's in my campaign world that I was sharing with. That I wrote that in there in the current campaign I'm running, because we have the folk, which is the local belief system, and then overlaid on top of that were the way, which was basically the higher religion that came in and then left. So the whole setting is there's this place across the ocean called that they named Farfields. It was populated by a people when they got there. They settled it and then couldn't make a go of it, so basically pulled out of it except for one city.
okay,
They're just like, screw this place, we can't make it work. It's too far away.
Roman England.
What?
Roman England.
Basically. And so I have now overlaid on that at least two religions, and then of course there's the really old stuff. But so yeah, I mean that's a great way to go. So this fertility thing could definitely be, you know, on the grassroots level. I mean, you can even have multiple levels. You can have the grassroots in the villages. It's burning wicker effigies of little, you know, of the Wicker Man, kind of just for fun, you know, bonfires and drinking and, you know, feasting and just general celebration, you know, judging a lamb contest, you know, kind of like, you know, who's got the best pig, kind of country fair affair. And then in the groves or in the valleys, it gets a little darker, or in those little backwater villages that aren't quite. And then meanwhile, in the city, you've got this third layer, which is, you know, we have taken these old beliefs, we've cleaned them up. The sacrifice is only symbolic now. You know, They bring in.
You have a lantern that you bring out for that year that's shaped like a man that you put an oil wick in and you burn it through the night, and it represents the symbology of it. But
Exactly. Or I mean, they may even still burn a full wicker thing, but it's going to be maybe much more centralized, whatever, it could still be, it's just going to be very clean, and, it's not going to leave anybody feeling bad. It's going to be more for show. It's going to be an opportunity for the nobles to show up and, show off how holy they are, even though they're not, necessarily, but, pay lip service, probably a lot of elbow greasing going on, it's, but you can even have those multiple layers. You can have, look, it's just feast time. Let's have fun. Yeah. And then meanwhile, in the shady groves, there's a scream of terror and the smell of burning flesh. So it can get really dark. And you can even add other layers, because you could have, perhaps there's a dark underbelly in the cities where the old ways are practiced in the guise of the new ways. So you have like your dark church. So you can definitely you can one holiday can be many things in your game too. That's the other thing to remember. It doesn't have to be just one thing. It can be so many things. It can be really whatever you need it to be for your game. I mean, if you look at,
can we make one where I burn a cat who's misbehaving?
No,
in effigy, only in effigy, I swear.
I mean, you can see it in fiction too. Like I know, like guys like Lovecraft and the like, they would often have the holidays, that the dark rituals in there sort of have a passing resemblance to or comparison to other religions' practices. Part of that was just being prejudice, and but also there was a good portion of it is to show that there were layers upon layers of these traditions that had often been disguised in modern trappings, but they were something older and darker and deeper. How many of these cultist groups in the pulp stories and stuff were carrying on like they were like some legit good guy religion? Hey, it's going to be great for everybody when the giant tentacle face comes and eats us all, right?
Yeah, I never understand. That's the one thing I will never get with Cthulhu, is the cultists that are like, because they never talk about the lies that they must be being told to think that they're somehow going to benefit. Because when we look at all the lore, it's like everybody goes mad, gets eaten, and dies. So how do you find that many people who are into this idea, and able to organize?
The thing with the way that I always read it, honestly, is that, first of all, you're talking about cultism to begin with.
Yeah.
And if you look at modern day real cults, you could ask the same question. It's like, how in the hell do you actually fall for that?
But hang on. See, the thing is modern cults are trying to, even if they're full of shit, which they usually are, they're trying to provide a benefit to the person, or they're lying to them. We can help you. We can make your life better. You'll have a community. You'll be part of something. When Lovecraft writes about cults, he's not talking about these cults of personality we deal with today. He's referring to the old concept of cultic behavior from the Middle East, right? That's where he's getting a lot of this from. And when you go look into that stuff, because I was doing research on Pazuzu and stuff like that. These demons all had a purpose and a benefit. Like, you worship Pazuzu because he hated La Mastra and he would prevent her from coming and killing your babies. So you made an offering to Pazuzu to protect your baby in the womb, type of idea. It won't become a monster. So there was always an upside with the evil. Cthulhu, there's never an upside. It's just, we're fucking crazy.
Well, so I don't, in the stories, that's not always the case, though. The cultists in Cthulhu usually believe that they're going to benefit in some way.
Right.
That somehow they're in the good graces of this god, and by doing his work, they're going to come out on top. It's very much that doomsday cult kind of mentality.
Okay.
In that, everybody else is going to suffer, but we're not, because we're in with Flynn here. We're the good guys here. Also, there are cases in the stories, that the leaders are lying to people. They're flat out just using people. Or often, like, if you look at the if you look at the story, Call of Cthulhu, when they describe the ritual going on in the swamps,
Yeah.
It's very much implied, if not stated, explicitly, that what we're seeing here is sort of a co-opting of existing beliefs. So that's the other thing, is I think a lot of the Cthulhu stuff insinuates itself into, and you see this better, I think, in later works that tie back into Cthulhu, because I think in the Lovecraftian stuff, that kind of broader
So
Lovecraftian folklore,
yeah.
is that you will see, for example, like modern tent revivalist groups tricking people into worshiping Lovecraftian gods by framing them as something. Did you see the recent, I think it was on Netflix, Black Mass?
No, I don't have Netflix.
So there's a good one in which I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Basically, it's a good example of that, where you have a holy man who convinces his people that something unholy is holy. And they show in the show that he kind of taps into their need for something to believe in, and their need for change, the sort of, these marginalized groups, whether that's, like out of work factory workers or miners, or farmers that are struggling, whatever, these groups that often suffer, is where these people will come in the stories. And like Lovecraft, that's where they also come in a lot.
Yeah, sorry. Are you talking about Midnight Mass?
Midnight Mass, yes, that's the one.
Yeah, with the vampire and all that.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. It felt like discount Stephen King, but yeah, I saw it.
It very much did feel like discount Stephen King, but at the same time, I think that's a good example of what you're talking about here. Like, why would they believe? Because, and ultimately, and just like in Lovecraft, it's only at the very end that I think any of them really realize that they've been had.
Fair.
Because if you remember what happened in that series, but it was a bit far off the point here for holidays, but it ties in, because that's the thing. Your holidays don't necessarily always have to be pure. That's where it came in. We're talking about like the different layers of the holidays. Your holidays can have been co-opted, not just by other entities, but they could also be co-opted by the nobility, by the church itself. You could have a church in your setting that is going through the motions, but more for political power, or something, depending on how much you wanted to work that into your game.
This is something good for holidays, because then you got to start looking at what are the high holidays of these types of things, and then how could they hide their dark holidays in regular stuff to fool people into celebrating it, right? Like, let's be honest, how many people in the world who are not Christians celebrate Christmas? How many people in the world who are not pagan Celts celebrate Halloween? Right? So how would you mask your dark black mass to make it something fun for the regular people to celebrate as a holiday, as a feast, as something they could do while they're unknowingly paying homage to some dark power, I
mean, one of the biggest expressions of that, honestly, is like how big Christmas and Santa Claus is in Japan.
And KFC.
Which is their Christmas dinner.
Yes. So
although KFC over there is a different level, man.
KFC everywhere in the world is a different level. You don't ever want Canadian KFC. It's garbage. We look at your KFC and go, well, if only we had American KFC. See, there we go. The religion of the chicken. There we are. The fried chicken religion.
Well, God, there was actually that's a thing that somebody wrote. I can't remember what it was, but basically it was an argument over how to cook the chicken.
Yea, thee will apply the sacred 11 herbs and spices.
Basically arguing over whether you were supposed to bake it or fry it, or.
And you shall pressure cook the chicken, not fry nor bake, for thine art not heathen.
It's more so that like Japan and Korea will have like buffet KFC where you have like different kinds of foods and sides and stuff that you can go through and eat.
Yeah.
The Christmas box, the Christmas bucket that they do every year for KFC in Japan is a big to do. It has a special cake in it. It actually has a commemorative plate in it. It has, it's a thing.
See, look at that. There's already ecumenical schisms happening in the chat over which one's the fried chicken, how to celebrate the fried chicken. And clearly, the Maryland is the best. It's awesome. I love it. But that's how
Maryland needs to stop claiming it's the best at everything. It's Maryland.
They're tiny. They have to do it. They're punching above their weight at all times. They're Maryland.
Like their whole belief, their whole crab cake puritanicalism.
Exactly. Well, that's when you get those religious fights between the crab cake and the pressure fried chicken churches, right? And that was a holy war. It was ugly as hell.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, the whole idea of that, if it's not a crab cake, a Maryland crab cake, it's not a real crab cake. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I think I will say I always have a can of Old Bay handy.
I can't find Maryland on a map. It's so small.
Maryland. Yes.
Which Mary are you named for, Maryland?
Sactius. Of course he chimes in with heresy.
Well, come on. It's not heresy. It's the traditional ways. Sactius knows the old ways in the midst of how to make the chicken.
Maryland sounds like it's the Scotland of the USA. No, that would be Appalachia.
Yeah.
Literally. That and the Ozarks, which is Appalachia 2.0. Literally, most of the people who settled the Ozarks moved out of Appalachia and into a more westerly Appalachia.
Oh my God, it's named after Henrietta Maria, the French-born Queen of England, Scotland, and Ireland during the 17th century.
Well, there you go. Rabbit hole achieved.
Yeah, I got through that one fast, thank God.
It was the only Catholic colony. That makes sense.
Meanwhile, Boston's like, what? All the Irish in Boston are just like, well, what the fuck are you talking about, Maryland?
And we're proud of it.
And we're proud of it. Of the Ozarks concept, John?
Yeah.
I always get the Ozarks and the Appalachians confused. But okay, so now, there's a thing, though. Take that idea, right? Take the idea of this old holler type, down in the dell type behavior, right? And we're talking about having the burning of the actual person and the sacrifice happening up in all these crazy places. Cool. What does the church do? The church knows this is going on. So in the city, they've got people burning candles in a window, a man-shaped candle. In the small villages, they've got little wicker men they burn, and the kids dance around the fire and eat candy. In the hollows, they're burning someone after doing the black bean pudding ceremony, right? Where you got the black beans, so you get to fuck all night, but then in the morning you get burnt or whatever.
Yeah.
What is the church going to do about this? Are they going to let this happen? Do they send out missionaries to try and teach them the error of their ways? Or do they do a crusade on these people at some point?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing in a D&D type of setting, what does the paladin and the cleric on the party think?
And what if the cleric's from the village? What if he's Druid level cleric? He's he's willing to sacrifice things left and right, and the paladin of the exact same faith is going, whoa, 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 whoa.
You're just supposed to burn a candle, man.
I mean, come on, man.
A wicker effigy at best, and that still makes me uncomfortable, right?
I'm uncomfortable with the wicker man. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I did say holler, but I also am a Canadian, so I can pronounce the word. Hollows. Down in the hollow.
Yeah. But, yeah, I did not actually. Funny, speaking of the Ozarks, I didn't realize what their footprint was, and when I moved here, it wasn't until recently I'm like, oh, I literally live on the edge of them because they take up the majority of the state of Missouri.
Miserable.
But no, so I mean, I think there's a lot to be said, honestly, for spending some time creating holidays and celebrations. I don't think you necessarily have to do what I did to like lay them all out ahead of time, though there's nothing wrong with that. Um, I don't think I would have done that without having a calendar program, because the calendar program made it super easy. Um, and I didn't have to worry about keeping track of it because it's literally right there as I progress through the campaign. But writing them, creating them as you need them, and then placing them and taking note of them, and then remembering them, I think is just as effective. Um, and also just to remember that they don't all have to be universal holidays. Holidays and holidays and celebrations can be localized, especially in a fantasy setting or even a medieval setting where you don't have the easy. You have a much more localized way of living. Yes, there was some intermingling, but it didn't. We didn't have mass media, and we didn't have telecommunications or anything like that. So you might have one village that has a day where they celebrate this thing that happened only in that village. And so when your players get there, they're like, what the hell is this? Why are they dancing around this frog idol? It doesn't have to be a cult. It could be that's 100 years ago. That's the year the frogs came in and ate all the grasshoppers that were destroying their crop. And so now that village has Frog Day. So Frog Day is the day where you celebrate the day that the frog saved us, and so maybe that carries over. Maybe the party is attacked by a frog on the edge of town, like a giant frog or something on the edge of town, and they kill it. And they get to town, they're like, "Hey, we killed this frog," and everybody's like, "You killed the frog?
Put them in the wicker."
Why would you do that? Why would you kill the frog? And then and of course, then even if that doesn't necessarily become to put them in the wicker, there's a tense moment. There's a chance for role play. There's a chance for the players to engage with the world and grow, and maybe that then leads to having to make amends, and then in doing so they gain a contact, or they get some lore for the world, or maybe that's just an obstacle on their way towards a greater goal, but it's still a bit of flavor and character for your campaign that then steeps back to that in that holiday.
Or alternately the paladin goes, "You worship a frog? Well, it's time to say goodbye to your village," and goes on a little mini crusade,
Yeah, it could be like, "I don't understand your frog worship. I've got a toad. It's not a frog. It's like a toad."
"No, sir, I don't like it. Don't like it one bit."
"What about salamanders?"
"Splitter."
"Do you worship salamanders as well?" "No, frogs. Only frogs." "I've got a turtle."
"I got turtle. You shut up." "Sorry."
"Is it all frogs or just that kind of frog?"
What if
"Do bullywugs count as frogs?"
And then the
They're
paladin
frog-like.
leaves. The paladin having this conversation goes, "That's it. I'm out. Goodbye. I'm leaving."
What was that?
The paladin just gives up at that point in the conversation and leaves the village. He's like, "Never mind. They're too stupid to kill."
And of course, Yogg brings it back to Call of Cthulhu and then
Of course he
back to the
does.
Cthulhu myth of Stagwa. Stagwa is the bloated, festering comic book guy of the mythos world.
It's the toad, right?
Yeah, it's the basically the lethargic toad.
Why do the French worship frogs?
He was going at my accents, I think.
No,
If you listen, I was going back and forth between French and English accents, and very bad accents in both cases. So
it's a fact.
how sacred can you be if you pee through your skin? But yeah, I think you can have a lot of fun with holidays. You don't want to go overboard and have one happen all the time, because then it just gets old. You definitely have to prep with it. But I think if you alternate between holidays and then just events and celebrations, you can get a lot of mileage out of it. Like I mentioned earlier, there was the brewing contest, the county brewing contest that I ran. I used as a start for an adventure. That is something that makes sense, but it's not heavy. It's just another version of the county fair, basically, right? Um, but weddings, church observances. My all dwarf campaign started off with the uh, celebration of Forge Day, and that was the kickoff of this big tragic campaign for the dwarves, which is still something that's in my campaign world that needs to be resolved. But um, you know, it can be anything that requires a special day or um, observation, really. It could be just a celestial event. It doesn't have to even have a holiday. You know, how big of a deal are eclipses or comets? Things like that happen. You got an entire Warhammer world that hinges around a comet as a big deal in their chronology there. So yeah, I mean, you can go real far with it if you want and use it, but I would always suggest using it not necessarily sparingly, but in moderation. Um, let's see. Alrighty, so we never did Creator Fertility Holiday, but I think we just kind of went off with the whole like Wicker Man different layers thing, so I think we kind of covered it. So anybody else have anything they want to add in the comments? Hey, later, John. Thanks for coming by. Always nice to see new faces. So excellent. Dwarf tossing day. No, it's actually had weird ramifications in my campaign. So the tragedy that befell the dwarf kingdom in my game has pulled basically all the dwarves out of the setting because they all went home for this event, and then there was this betrayal that occurred at the event that pretty much turned 90% of the dwarves to stone. Um, and so my players have noticed that like there are the few dwarf businesses and stuff that were in the village are now empty or being run by minions. Uh, they had an NPC that traveled with them for a good long time in their lower levels. This dwarf named Dwelney. He was like a young dwarf. His beard was just coming in. He wanted to go out on an adventure. He went home for the holiday, and when they found out what happened, they were like, "Oh, poor Dwelney." So I was originally going to run that adventure slash campaign as a dwarf only campaign because it was the whole idea these dwarves are going to save their kingdom kind of thing. It was a themed game, but I may end up running it with my current party when I come back to the campaign because after they finish this whole dragon thing, I'm going to take a break and run some other stuff and then come back to it. So, but we'll see. I do like the idea of themed campaigns where you have the Crusader campaign or the Dwarf campaign. We're playing elves. The group I had for that I started running in really petered out quick though. So like just people got busy, so it never went anywhere. So technically it's unresolved in my campaign world. Okay. Uh, all right, guys. Well, I think I've covered the topic, and I'm running out of stuff to say. So
I've got nothing.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming by, but I think I may actually call the stream early today and
Oh.
go enjoy a leisurely breakfast before I have to do the therapy thing. And I will chat at you all later. Have a good one, folks. There is just a real quick heads up. There is no By the Sword this coming Monday, because of the holiday, because of Memorial Day. We will resume regular sessions on the 10th of June, which is going to be 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe, if I got the date right. And then from there, we'll see. Have a good one, everybody. Think about your holidays. Put holidays in your world. It's not hard to do. You just got to spend a little bit of time. Have a good one, folks.
Bye.
And